Hello there. I want to talk about Lebanon, uh, poor Lebanon, which has been through the mill lately. And I'm going to relay the thoughts of Jafar al-Ahmar, a close friend of mine, who is in Lebanon. He's Shiite and traveling the south near the Israeli border. And I particularly want to also relay the thoughts of a friend of his, Dr. Elias Gerardi, who is an eye doctor who has been elected as a member of parliament in 2022, one of 13 independent members of parliament from the south, from the southern part of Lebanon. And he's an important figure, in my estimation, and a hopeful figure. So basically, you know the score. I mean, about a week ago, or thereabouts, just over a week ago, actually, a new government was formed in Lebanon 4 weeks after the election of Michel Aoun as president. And we have this new government, and it's facing great challenges. I mean, prior to last Tuesday, Israel was blowing up buildings every day close to the southern border. And meanwhile, there are threats on the border with Syria, where border villages are being terrorized, kidnapped, and killed on the basis that Syria is dealing with smuggling. And then there are the Shiite refugees from Syria, where Shiites are now being persecuted. Lebanese are also worried about breakdown of security at a whole camp in the north, northern Syria. I know that's not as far from the Syrian border, but Lebanon has had problems with ISIS before, and 100 ISIS families left and escaped to Iraq from al-Hol. And if this continues, the Lebanese fear they'll start coming to Lebanon. So the Lebanese are worried on various fronts, and feel that people shouldn't be surprised if there's resistance. And meanwhile, flights are being searched as they come in from abroad. The lack of money is an issue. And it's not just, not just flights from Iran, it's flights from everywhere. Prior to 2006, it was easier for Lebanese to send money home. You can still send money back to Lebanon for the Lebanese diaspora, but it's difficult now. You can use Western Union for small amounts, but not for major problems. U.S. and U.K. security control security at the airport. They control security training at the airport, and then basically indirectly control security at the Beirut airport, which means that people can't bring money in cash very easily. And in a situation where the Lebanese people abroad have enough money to rebuild the South if they were allowed to bring it home. So these are issues. And what does my friend, a Shiite friend, say? My Shiite friend from in southern Lebanon. He's from the Bekaa Valley, actually. Excuse me. He says the other day a plane from Tehran to Beirut was refused permission to land. It was stuck in Tehran. 90% of the passengers were Lebanese. This was one day after an Israeli army spokesman said that the flight was going to be carrying money. You know the issue. They don't want money to get to Hezbollah. Well, God's sake. Anyway, there you go. That's the issue. Then the Lebanese government gave the order. The Lebanese government gave the order to refuse the flight permission to land in Beirut, which, says my friend, shows the total control they are under. This incident with the flight provoked violent protests. The protests were on Valentine's Day, February 14th, which is, by coincidence, I suppose, also the anniversary of the assassination of Hariri, which was a major effort. So my friend Jafar al-Ahmar has been touring Kakala, the Lebanese village at the border with Israel. The villagers returned home 2 or 3 days ago to find most of their homes destroyed by Israel. I mean, really unnecessary. I watched pictures of a D8 and Ripper. You know, those huge bulldozers. I drove one once on an open cast coal mine. They shake the ground. These vast D8 bulldozers. They're immense, bigger than tanks. They're big, big, big things. And they have a ripper, like a claw on the back, which is used to rip ground prior to excavation. And it rips. It's like the ground feels like the sea when you're driving across with these machines. It is huge. And I watched D8 and Ripper used to drive along a road in South Lebanon to rip the road up, to tear the road apart right down the middle. I mean, it's so cruel. I found that the cruelest act. I found it crueler than watching buildings being blown up, because it's a deliberate act of vandalism. Vandalism, really. It's anyway. So Israel. Back to Jaffa's words. Israel kept 5 bases, and they're digging in. 5 bases close to the border, of course, but still targeting people. Yesterday, they killed someone in the village of Aita. And this is using drones to target people. Well, you see, it's intimidating, isn't it? You don't know you're going to be picked off from the sky. It is a form of state terrorism. Interestingly enough, in the village of Kakala, there were 2 guys under the rubble for almost 3 months in Kavakala. They pulled them out alive. Well, one had been declared dead and one declared missing. Now, how can people be under the rubble for nearly 3 months? Well, they were trapped in the basement of a small shop that had food and drink, and they survived off that. Well, my goodness, that's an amazing story, really. Israel's keeping its forces in Lebanon, says Jaffa, might trigger later unrest in Lebanon, especially with the ongoing drone attacks. Last week, they, for instance, launched a drone attack targeting and killing someone in Sidon. They make everything remain unstable, you know. We have a new government, says Jaffa, formed as a compromise. It's changed course from the previous government. This is pro-American, this government. Now, remember the context here. The ceasefire was delivered and renewed by Boulos, Lebanese businessman. Donald Trump's daughter married the son of a Lebanese businessman, Boulos. So it's part of Trump's wedding present. And the stabilization of Lebanon is part of Trump's wedding present to his daughter, who's married a Lebanese boy, a Lebanese-American boy. You know, it's how things are working now. Yeah. So where were we? Yes. So we have a new government that's pro-American in Lebanon, and they may now place restrictions on planes coming from Iraq next. The idea being to control the borders, to control cash coming into Lebanon. Everybody waits for the Lebanese parliament now to endorse the new government, but presumably they will. The government will be under pressure. Hezbollah and indeed other groups as well demanding that the government take action, because they say that the government is now in charge of the security of the country. In other words, Hezbollah has passed on the mantle. It's laid down. It's extraordinary in a way. The fear is then that someone might, Hezbollah for instance, might take up arms again. That's a real concern for ordinary Lebanese. The government cannot obviously prevent what Jaffa's words is resistance against the occupation. The Israelis are being provocative. They're establishing more posts on Mount, Jaffa says, on Mount Hermon, which overlooks Lebanon. Well, it's the truth, it's a fact, including the Bekaa Valley. Mount Hermon on the border with Syria. Mount Hermon is the border with Syria, I suppose. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what Dr. Elias Gerardi, Jaffa's friend, Dr. Elias Gerardi is Christian MP, as we kind of said, independent, South Lebanon, and he's given me permission to share his words. We need to be detached from sectarian thinking. We are facing Israeli aggression in the south. We need Israel to complete its withdrawal. We haven't had a strong Lebanese army for decades. We need an army that can include all factions. Then we can ask Hezbollah to step back. The army needs political support. The Lebanese people need to protect themselves, mainly from the unstable border with Syria. Israel's failure to completely withdraw gives the resistance a reason to fight again. Okay, well now, just something aside here. The British helped produce the Lebanese Border Regiment. There's always been this fear in Lebanon of a kind of Islamist uprising. And there's a question as to how easily the Lebanese army can face up to Hezbollah if it chooses to do so or is ordered to do so, because many of the Lebanese army themselves are Shiite traditionally. The Lebanese army, the soldiers, the foot soldiers in it, are Shiite by and large. So Lebanese army needs to take over in the south, but in as non-confrontational way as possible. Otherwise, you've got a problem for the soldiers who come from the south themselves. Now, back to, Dr. Elias Gerardi. Our problem now is not Hezbollah. Hezbollah has stepped back, and there is no need for them. Hezbollah is waiting for someone to step forward and protect our borders. Everything that happens in the south has to go through the government, says Dr. Elias. It's the Lebanese government's responsibility. There's pressure on our government to make compromises. Many Lebanese parties, including Hezbollah, were aligned with other countries, but no more, says Dr. Elias. Interesting remark. The external influence of different parties is no longer an issue. Well, yeah, because Iran isn't really funding Hezbollah in a significant way as it was at one time. The border problem we have may become more serious in the long term. Anytime we have a problem, we try to insert Hezbollah into the equation, says Dr. Elias. The border problem has nothing to do with Hezbollah. And then he switches tack, he talks about banking. Our banking problems were from corruption, but there was also mishandling done on purpose to destabilize the banks. The hit we took from the banking system, remember, huge collapse of the banking system, is that it wiped out the deposits of ordinary people. We have to reform the whole banking system. A reformed security system and the autonomy of the judges is also essential, says Dr. Elias. Now, go on. He then says, but returning the depositors' money and creating transparency and bringing Lebanese money from overseas could make a huge difference. Well, of course it could. The new government, here's a point now from him, the new government has been negotiating a loan from the IMF, International Monetary Fund. We think this is a bad idea. Of course it's a bad idea. The IMF has destabilized so many countries with the conditions it places on its loans. The IMF, one of the world's bad organizations, in my view, and just needs abolishing. It's a huge problem for the world, the International Monetary Fund. It caused huge problems to Egypt. IMF loans are dangerous for countries. They destabilize countries. Not the way forward. Short-term fix, long-term problems. A cruel, useless organization, the International Monetary Fund, needs to be abolished, in my view. Anyway, Dr. Elias says the new government has been negotiating a loan from the IMF. We think this is a bad idea. Well, I agree with him. And so, but then he concludes, to return trust, you have to get money back into the banking system. And he's right. As for our external issues, we can protect ourselves once we have a strong security system. Well, that's all right. Ours is a long roadmap, but I am optimistic. And actually, he's not alone in feeling optimistic. The Lebanese are optimistic. If Israel leaves them alone, and there's every chance they will, because they've got Donald Trump breathing down their neck because his daughter's married to the Lebanese-American boy. Yeah, Lebanon's got a chance for the first time in many years. And with people like Dr. Elias coming forward, independent MPs, there's a real chance of a better tomorrow for poor, broken Lebanon. God bless Lebanon. Okay, thank you.